Section 3.2, Common Multiples. Multiples are numbers you say when skip counting by a number. For instance, when you skip count by fives, you say 5, 10, 15, 20, etc. Those are the multiples of 5. Sometimes people get multiples and factors confused. The multiples of a number are generally bigger than the number, while the factors of a number are generally smaller than the number. So I'm going to write down once again the multiples that I have for 5. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. I could continue going on. I'll do a couple more here, 35 and 40. So those are the multiples of 5, and of course that's a never-ending list. That list will go on forever and ever. Let me also give and write down here the multiples of 3. So if I skip count by 3s, it would be 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 27, 30, 33, 36, and once again, I could keep going because that list would never stop. Notice that in both of these lists, I have some numbers that are the same. I have 15 in both lists. I also have 30 in both lists. 15 and 30 are known as common multiples of 5 and 15 because they are both multiples of 5 and 3. Now, as I say, there are many more common multiples of 5 and 3 other than just 15 and 30. And maybe you notice the pattern. The next one would be 45. If I added another 15 to it, the next one would be 60, and so forth. But we are usually interested, when we are working with finding common multiples, we are usually interested in just finding the smallest common multiple. So the smallest common multiple of 3 and 5 is 15. And there's a name given for that. It's called the least common multiple. And sometimes it is just written down instead of writing the entire 3 words. It is just known as the LCM. So finding the LCM of different numbers just means finding the smallest number that is a common multiple of both of those numbers. Let's do another one. Find the LCM, the least common multiple of 6 and 8. In order to do that, first I'm going to find the multiples of 6. So 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, 36, 42. Now the question is, when do I stop? Generally, I want to give 5 or 6 of the multiples of 1, and then I want to start working on the other one. So the multiples of 8, when I skip count by 8, I get 8, 16, 24, 32. Oh, well, wait a minute. I already see that I do have a common multiple in both of these lists. I have 24. So the least common multiple of 6 and 8 is 24. Now, if I continued both of my lists, let me go back up to that 6 list for a minute. I'm skip counting by 6. My next number would be 48. If I continued with my 8s, the next number would be 40, followed by 48. Notice that 48 is also a common multiple, but it's not the least common multiple. We generally want the least common multiple in math, and there are reasons for that we'll talk about at one point. Sometimes you might need to go through and find the least common multiple of more than just 2 numbers. So here's an example. Find the LCM of 3, 4, and 6. Once again, I'm going to do that by going through skip counting. First of all, by 3s. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, and once again, I'll stop there at this point. When I do the 4s, I'm going to skip count by 4s. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24. I'll stop there as well. And let me do the 6's. 6, 12. Oh, as soon as I get to that 12, I see that there is a 12 in all three of those lists. So the least common multiple of these three numbers is 12. Once again, if I had wanted to, I could have continued with these lists. For the 3's, it would have been 21, 24. And notice I also have a 24 already in the blue list in the multiples of 4. If I did the same thing with the 6's, it would be 6, 12, 18, 24. 24 is a common multiple of 3, 4, and 6, but it's not the least common multiple. Let's do one more. What is the LCM of 3 and 9? As I go through and do that, first of all, I'm going to start writing the multiples of 3. 3, 6, 9. Oh, as soon as I put down that 9, I know when I start writing the multiples of 9, my very first one is going to be 9. It would be 9, 18, 27. But once again now, notice the least common multiple is 9. So it is possible that the least common multiple of two different numbers could be one of the numbers itself. And that's an important thing to keep in mind. Being able to find the least common multiples of numbers is important many times in math, but one time we use this skill is when comparing fractions. But let's talk about comparing like fractions first. So you know that if you were given the two fractions, let's say 1/4 and 3/4, which one of those fractions is larger? Well, we could, if we wanted to, we could draw a picture showing 1/4. So if I have 1/4, I'm going to take a square. I'm going to divide up into 4 equal pieces. I'm going to shade in one of them. And if I did the same thing with 3/4, I have the same size square. Now I'm going to shade in 3 of those 4 pieces. Well, it's obvious that the 3/4 is larger than the 1/4. And it's very easy to compare like fractions because if the denominators are the same, whichever numerator is the bigger one is the bigger fraction. So if I wanted to, I could put in a symbol. I could say that 1/4 is less than 3/4. And notice I use that symbol, and let me just talk about that symbol for a moment. This particular symbol that I just circled right now, that is the less than symbol. The less than symbol, it is pointing to the smaller number. So that is known as the less than. If I just had some other numbers, let's say I had 8 and 5, I would say 8 is greater than 5. This is the greater than symbol because I'm reading from left to right. I'm starting at the 8 and I'm going towards the 5. So I would say 8, and then this is the greater than symbol for 5 because it still points to the smaller number. So you do need to be able to use the symbols less than and greater than as we go through and we compare fractions. So here I have two more fractions to compare. The one to the left is 2/3. The one to the right is 3/4. Which one is the larger number, 2/3 or 3/4? Now, you might be able to figure out what it is by pictures, but you always don't want to be drawing pictures, and sometimes it's going to be virtually impossible, depending on the fractions, to know which one is bigger. So we do need another way of doing that. So I have these fractions 2/3 and 3/4, and I am going to rewrite these fractions 2/3 and 3/4 below. What I'd like to do is I'd like to be able to change both of those denominators so they are exactly the same. And in order to do that, I need to know a common multiple of the 3 and the 4, and in this case it'd be nice to know the least common multiple. So if I want to know the least common multiple of 3 and 4, I'm going to first of all figure out the common multiples of 3. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, and I could go on. For 4, when I write down the common multiples of 4, 4, 8, 12, 16, and I notice that they do have a common multiple of 12. So what I'm going to do is I am going to change both of these fractions in their present form into a fraction that has exactly the same denominator. I'm going to change both of these into twelfths. Now, I did that by knowing that the least common multiple of 3 and 4 is 12, and this next step is very important. In order to change 2/3 into twelfths, I can multiply 3 times 4. 3 times 4 equals 12. Since I multiplied the bottom number by 4, I have to multiply the top number by 4. And it's very important that you see why. When I multiply something by the same numerator and the same denominator, what I'm really doing is I'm multiplying it by 1. 4/4 is equal to 1. If the numerator and the denominator are the same, it's equal to 1. So I'm actually multiplying that by 1. And anytime I multiply a number by 1, I get exactly the same number. I'm just giving a different name for it. So now I'm going to multiply 2 times 4. 2 times 4 gives me 8. 2/3 and 8/12 are exactly the same value. It's just different names for it. It's just like having someone that's sometimes might be called Joseph and sometimes they're called Joe. The same person, different names. 2/3 and 8/12 are exactly the same. I just give them different names. I'm going to do the same thing with the 3/4, and I'm going to change that into twelfths. So I need to figure out, well, what do I need to multiply 4 by to get to 12? I'm going to multiply that by 3. Since I multiplied the bottom by 3, I have to multiply the top by 3, because once again, I need to multiply by 1. 3 times 3 gives me 9. So now I know that 2/3 is exactly the same thing as 8/12. I know 3/4 is exactly the same thing as 9/12. And now I have fractions that have the same denominator. 9/12 is larger than 8/12. So I know that 3/4 is bigger than 2/3. So I am going to put in the symbol and I am going to say 2/3 is less than 3/4 because I know that the 3/4 is bigger. And once again, remember that the arrow needs to be pointing to the smaller number. Let's do another example. What is larger, 7/8 or 5/6? In order to figure that out, the very first thing I am going to do is I'm going to figure out the least common multiple of my denominators so that I can have like fractions. So I'm going to go through and give the multiples of 8. 8, 16, 24, 32, 40. I'll stop there. The multiples of 6. 6, 12, 18, 24. Oh, I see right now that I do have a common multiple. My least common multiple is 24. So now I am going to go through and I am going to change the fractions that I have into fractions that have the same denominator of 24. So I am going to write it the way I'm writing it so that I can show my work. I need to change 7/8 into 24ths. Well, in order to go from 8 to 24, I need to multiply by 3. If I'm going to multiply the bottom by 3, I have to multiply the top by 3 because I have to multiply by 1. 7 times 3 gives me 21. So I know that 7/8 is equal to 21/24. I'm going to do the same thing with the bottom. Change 5/6 into 24ths. In order to change from 6 to 24ths, I have to multiply 6 times 4. Since I multiplied the 6 times 4, I have to multiply the 5 times 4 because once again, this has to equal 1. Anytime I multiply something by 1, I'm going to get the same thing. 5 times 4 in this case is 20. So now I have fractions that have like denominators or like fractions. I know 7/8 is the same thing as 21/24. I know 5/6 is the same as 20/24. Well, 21/24 is bigger than 20/24, so if I wanted to use my greater than or less than symbol between 7/8 and 5/6, I know 7/8 is larger, so I'm going to say 7/8 is larger than 5/6. We can continue with the same idea, but this time we're going to work with 3 different fractions. Put these 3 different fractions in order from smallest to largest. 3/8, 1/3, and 1/4. Once again, the first thing I'm going to do is I need to have like fractions. So I am going to go through and find the least common multiple of all of those denominators. So for 8, the multiples are 8, 16, 24, 32. I'll stop there. For 3, 6, 9, 12. I still don't have something that's common between the two, so I am going to go through and I'm going to continue. 15, 18. I still don't have anything that's common. 21, 24. Oh, looks like 24 is a common multiple of 8 and 3, so now I need to do it with my 4. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24. They all have a common multiple of 24. So I am going to go through with all 3 of these fractions, and I'm going to change all 3 of these fractions so they have a denominator of 24. So notice what I do. I put a 24 to the right of all those fractions. Now I just need to figure out, well, what do I need to multiply each fraction by in order to change them to 24ths? For that very first one, I need to multiply 8 times 3 to give me 24. So I know I need to multiply the top by 3. 3 times 3 gives me 9. For the second one, I need to multiply 3 times 8 to get 24. So I need to multiply the top by 8. 1 times 8 gives me 8. So 1/3 is the same thing as 8 24ths. For the 1/4, I need to multiply 4 by 6 to get 24. So I have to multiply the top by 6. 1 times 6 gives me 6. So 1/4 is the same thing as 6 24ths. So now I take a look at all of those fractions. 3/8 is the same as 9 24ths. 1/3 is the same as 8 24ths. And 1/4 is the same as 6 24ths. The direction said to put in order from the smallest to the largest. The smallest of those is the 6 24ths. So that would just be that fraction 1/4. The next one would be 8 24ths. So that would be the fraction 1/3. And then the next one would be the 9 24ths, which is 3/8. So I put them in order from the smallest to the largest. I could also write them with the symbols. 1/4 is less than 1/3, which is less than 3/8. Being able to find common multiples and change fractions so they have the same denominator is vitally important in the rest of this course. If you have any questions as you go through the homework, please let me know.